IVM.
Have you seen the movie Lucy, released in 2014, featuring Scarlett Johansson? Or movie Limitless, featuring Bradley Cooper? These movies are based on an immortal myth that humans only use 10% of our brain. And both these characters achieve 100% of their brain potential through a drug. The lead character learns language is an instant, beats up bad guys, teleports, moves things with their mind, amongst many things. These are good movies, but it's a myth that we use only 10% of our brain. There are many such movies and series based on this myth, and just like most of them, it's a work of fiction. Hi, I'm Prashant Uttekar, a learning enthusiast, and you are listening to the Relearning podcast. And today I'm making an attempt to debunk an old myth that we use only 10% of our brain. There is a brain imaging technique called as functional magnetic resonance imaging, or fMRI, which measures activity in the brain while an individual is performing various tasks. Using these methods, researchers show that most of our brain is in use most of the time, even for simple actions. Even while sleeping, a lot of our brain is active, including your eye movements. Yes, your eyes keep moving while you are asleep. Why is this myth believable? We try to measure our shortcomings and failures and connect it with untapped brain potential, as simple as that. Brain roughly weighs around 3% of body weight and uses 20% of body's energy. Think of your kitchen as your brain. Depending on the type of meal and available tools in the kitchen, you use different sections of the kitchen. Let's say you're preparing your morning tea or coffee, your entire brain works together for a simple task for this preparation. And a lightning storm of neuronal activity occurs almost across entire brain within few seconds. Scientists for the longest time couldn't figure out function of various sections of our brain like our frontal lobe, and they literally called them as silent areas. Well, frontal lobe is involved in problem solving, motor functions, memory, impulse, social and sexual behavior, amongst many other things. Humans pack in around 86 million neurons, which is most from any other species. This dense packing makes us smarter than other living beings. If we used only 10% of our brain, evolution would have genocided long time ago and we would have much smaller brain. Our brain is designed for one task at a time. Multitasking as a term was originated for computers and not for humans. What you think you do as multitasking is basically multi-focusing or multi-switching. Example, you attending a webinar with 10,000 distractions. Do listen to episode 25 of the Relearning podcast titled as Multitasking is a Myth, and episode 10 featuring Dr. Colleen Lightbody titled as How Brain Learns. Your brain is powerful and efficient. It manages to use less energy and share maximum information in every task it performs. There are many unresolved mysteries around our brain. If anything, we know very little about our brain and yet to explore various functions. I don't want to put a percentage to the known and the unknown part of the brain and start another myth. If you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on IVM Network. You can listen to us on IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com. You can also follow us on social media. We are at IVM Podcast on Twitter and Instagram. If you want to reach out to me, I am Prashant Uttekar on Facebook, LinkedIn and Twitter, and DA_curious_1 on Instagram. Until next time, this is Prashant Uttekar. Keep relearning. Bye.
Hey, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Cyrus Says, author-director Neeti Sharma talks about her new book Invictus, The Jungle That Made Me. On Getting Meta with Chuck, Meeta Malhotra, founder and editor of The Hard Copy, tells us how not to be scared of making mistakes. Sheila Aditya and myself talked to the CEO of MX Player, Karan Bedi, about his vision for his company on Shunya One. On Know Your Kanun, Amber introduces us to law search engines and how to use them with Indian Kanun founder Sushank Sinha. And on Tere Mere Raste, Keshav travels to the abandoned city of Fatehpur Sikri. Do follow us on social media. We are IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you enjoyed this show or any of our shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. Word of mouth is the best way to spread the word about a podcast. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors on the network this week: Ciet Cred, Bank of Baroda, Quarter, CoinSwitch, Kuber, and Intuit India. We really do appreciate the support. You are what makes this possible.
What if you could relive some of the biggest and most public feuds in Indian corporate history?
Peer back through the window of time to see who among HUL or Nirma stood on top.
Or who was more dominant between Tata Motors and Maruti Suzuki?
Tune in with me, Ambi Parmeshwaran,
And me, Anupam Gupta, on Bank of Baroda presents The Last Brand Standing,
where we talk about two brands vying for the top position.
and what their journeys were,
Every Tuesday on the IVM Podcast app or website.
or wherever you get your podcast from.